welcome back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
And remember, our goal is always to guide you to personal and financial wellness.
Well, you're back with the Don and Gino Show. That's right, with our new studio here. Check it out. We got TVs, we got ferns, and we got Gino, Jim Reap with the Reape-Rickett Law Firm. Hopefully you listened to our last segment about the importance of choosing the right professional and the changes in the court system, especially regarding family law. But in general, the court systems have changed. You might want to stay up to date or make sure you choose the right professional. Today we're going to talk about, things are a little rough at home maybe, and you're considering divorce. What are the steps you should be thinking about prior to? Because I've gone through a divorce, and I know those steps are imperative before it might be too late. So Jim Reap with the Reape-Rickett.
Reape-Rickett, right.
Yeah, Reape-Rickett.
You had a lot of coffee this morning, Don?
It's good stuff. But Jim has personally assisted me. He's, I think, the best family law practice law attorney out here by far. And he's going to give you some insight of what to think ahead of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, let's cut the emotions out of it, because in instances where there's strong emotions, they have to be dealt with. We may be talking about domestic violence. It's really interesting, a concept of coercive control. So you may have a controlling spouse who's, looking in your cell phone, who has a GPS on your car, who denies you access to the credit cards, denies you access to bank accounts. Those all can be like acts of domestic violence and abuse.
Oh, wow.
Which is important to understand the things that are going on. But if we take the emotions away and we basically just say we have a family with 2 kids, a house, retirement accounts, some savings, maybe a vacation home, toys, boats, certain things like that. The most important thing is to have some awareness of your finances, access to the tax returns. So we were talking while we were off camera about some people who are inclined to move money, hide money, or something like that.
That's got to be classic. That's got to be a regular.
It is, but the first thing that I do is when I get the tax returns is I look at the schedule of interest and dividends and make sure that for every institution that generated a 1099 that's been disclosed that I had this account. And if you don't, well,
where did it go?
Exactly, what became of it. So, the most important thing is have
Rookie, new guy.
Is to have that awareness of your finances. The other thing it really makes sense is I will talk to an awful lot of people, and we do the what if scenarios. They have not yet decided what is going to happen in their marriage, and I'll give them some tips about maintaining awareness, things to look out for. Like if your spouse is doing the following things, then they may be thinking, as well, and doing some pre-divorce planning, and keep your eyes out for that, where you're basically getting led down the primrose path. But we could also do a projection, like with as much information to say, because California is a community property state, so the concept of dividing by 2 is not that difficult. And then we have apples and oranges, so we have pre-tax assets, post-tax assets, and we try to divide pre-tax on one side and post-tax on the other, so that you're not paying with your post-tax dollars to buy a pre-tax asset or something like that. But it can really be done rather quickly. So community property basically means that everything acquired between the date of your marriage and the date that you separate is presumed to be community property. And there's a boatload of exceptions. So if you spend an hour with an attorney, you can go over it, because let's say you do have the house, and I will ask, well, where did the money from the down payment come from? Oh, my husband sold the house that he had before we were married, and he used those proceeds as a down payment on our house.
Right.
Okay, well, according to the law, he's going to be entitled to that money back before there is any community interest in the property. So I have seen cases where I've come into them and one spouse was sort of clueless as to the exceptions to community, or believed by virtue of marrying somebody that had a separate estate, that they themselves became wealthy, and in the divorce they're going to get half of the property. And had they known, I don't know, maybe they would have worked a little bit harder on the marriage and try to maintain it, because
that's a good point.
You know what's happening.
That's actually the question that I'm thinking about this whole time. Just I want to make sure Nella considers this. No, is that you may not get what you think you're going to get. So I'm sure that there's some couples that could sit down, go through this projection, look at the numbers, and say, "Oh, well, I can't live on that, so let me try to make this work."
Exceedingly common during the recession. I would meet with people who were contemplating divorce, and I'd run through this scenario, and then I'd ask if questions about whether or not they were suffering any abuse at home. And if they said no, I'd say, "You can't do this. you literally can't do this. You and your children will not be able to survive. It's not feasible. Your total standard of living will collapse.
And it'll affect the children more than anyone.
Exactly. You're not being abused. Go home."
Particularly, well, and it could have been just because of the recession. I mean, there was a lot of pressures. I know I went through it because our industry, being the mortgage industry, our income went in a fifth.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And then my wife lost her job. Believe me, there's extra stress on a marriage, for sure.
No, I can understand, but separating and establishing a two-household model is not necessarily the answer to that stress.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess that's one of the important things to take into consideration. Can both families, now creating two separate families, kind of two households, as you mentioned, can both households maintain a reasonable standard of living should they separate, or are they barely making it? It's expensive to live in California. It's expensive to live in Los Angeles. Sometimes these households are barely making it as it is. How do you split it into two and both survive?
It's sobering for some of them, because you're exactly right. I heard statistically that most people in Southern California live off of 80 to 130% of what they make. Okay, so there'll be cases that their lifestyle is, financed by debt, and at times then, the access to
that
more
comes into
borrowing,
play in a divorce.
The access to more borrowing could be cut off. So there are some real sobering events where people have to understand that their lifestyle is going to change.
But that was an important point, that lifestyle being financed by debt is a big piece, because you might be living a great lifestyle, living in a really big house, nice cars and all that, and thinking, I'm accustomed to this lifestyle, I deserve this lifestyle if we split up. But if it's financed by debt, that's not a true lifestyle. And that was brought up in the courts. I was wow, that makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely, because it's a model that can't sustain. Right. So it has to be, broken down to what is sustainable. Here's the interesting thing. So while one spouse says, well, I'm entitled to be supported, consistent with the marital standard of living. But what if there's a competing side or consideration that your judge, who is the intermediary, also has to be concerned that person too, maybe the support provider, is as entitled to live at the marital standard of living. So the reality is in most of these cases, without excess earnings, nobody lives at the marital standard of living. Everybody has to adjust. And it's even worse now with the changes to the tax law, because in instances where there was a discrepancy in earnings, one spouse may be entitled to alimony or spousal support, which previously was tax deductible. So follow this. You have somebody in a very high tax bracket who is going to pay alimony to somebody in a very low tax bracket. If we still consider them as a family, by shifting the income from the high tax bracket to the low tax bracket, we would create tax savings. And in some instances, that could be thousands of dollars a month. So in the old system, if the support was deductible, the payor may pay a little bit more, but they get the benefit of the deduction, so the net cost was less. The recipient paid taxes, but they're paying taxes at such a low rate their net spendable was more. No longer deductible or tax includable. The payor today pays less, but it cost more because we lost the tax savings. The payee receives less and nets less because they're not paying taxes. So that scenario where there'd be, say, $2,000 a month in tax savings, that's 2,000 net dollars that are no longer available for
Oh yeah,
this
it would have
family.
changed our numbers for
Hey.
sure.
Absolutely.
So this is tax law saving families. Because it
It's
sounds
doing
like
that.
it makes it just a little less beneficial to get divorced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A
I know
little
my
harder.
friends love that. Cheaper to keep her.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. I say that every night. It's part of my prayer.
The only other thing I want to bring up. No, you're,
It's cheaper to keep her good night.
we all know if there's anybody leaving that family, it's not.
It's me being kicked out.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
You
worst
married
part-
up.
and
You're
the
the-
worst,
you're
worst
the-
part about it is I'd be like, you're right. You're right. I gotta
Usually,
go.
well, that's usually. Don't you have a sign at home? You
You're right.
I think most men should have that.
It doesn't say it right here?
Yeah,
But
no
I had
doubt.
it tattooed on my forehead.
One of the last things I wanted to bring up, because it's an imperative thing, because the emotional part of it, you know, you're one side in most cases, sometimes it's both, but usually there's one side that's more hurt than the other. We'll just say it's cheating, for example, and they feel the right that because you cheated, blah, 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 but I've learned that doesn't have any effect in the court systems.
Oh, not in California.
Yeah, California is a no-fault state. So, and those type of emotions, when somebody has really strong emotions and they're angry or something like that, it can make the divorce spin completely out of control, because they're trying to placate a different need. They want justice in the way that they view the justice, but the reality is it's a very rare occasion that any of that would ever enter the courtroom in a no-fault setting. The other problem
even if
is,
there's abuse, or does that
well,
change
no.
things?
In abuse, there's a greater chance that you're going to get to it. But let me give you an example. Here's a real case from a few years ago. Have a client come in, lady. She believes that her husband is cheating. In fact, she has a good idea who he's cheating with, and she asked me about, wanting to resolve that, once and for all, whether or not it's really happening. So she proposed that she would go over to the potential girlfriend's house. And I'm like, really? How would you like to go to jail? How would you like your case to start that way? You go over there, you find out he's there, you flip out. The next thing you know, there's some type of, disturbance. Guess who goes to jail?
Somebody has to go to jail in those instances.
Right. Is it worth it?
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
So
these
those
are
are things to consider.
this is why we wanted to bring this up, because if you're contemplating, let's just put it that way, contemplating
I
divorce.
forgot that's how this all started.
Yes.
If you're contemplating
Right.
divorce, consider all this.
Yeah, and talk to a true professional who's been around the block a lot, has seen it all, knows the court systems, knows the judges, knows what to look out for, and the landmines. And I'm telling you, it's imperative. I can speak from experience that, Jim, you've done a great job. Your law firm, your people that support us. You're a good person because you also guided me through it as a friend, through things, and it's imperative. It's one of the most emotional things you're going to go through, but you helped me keep my head on, help keep things going. You helped with the negotiations, so we negotiated, just didn't throw it all to the courts or the attorneys and all that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And all I can say is definitely reach out to the Reape-Rickett Law Firm, and this is Jim Reap himself. Again, how do they get a hold of you?
661-288-1000.
I'm thinking about this whole process. You have to wait 6 months and a day to be divorced, right?
So that really
still true?
That's true. But I got really good with one guy because I divorced him from the same wife 3 times. So the third time that we did, he kept on remarrying her. I'm pretty sure he's married to her now. So by the third time, we just sat in the conference room. We did all the paperwork in a day. Got it to the court the next day. And so all their orders were in place, all the property was divided, but they were not returned to the status of a single person until the 6 months and one day. So it's the cooling off period. In other words, judge is not allowed to dissolve the marriage until that minimum time period goes away. But all the other issues can be
Do you
taken
just
that
leave
would
it as
get-
a boilerplate with a change date here?
I was actually thinking you just need to have that same cooling off period before you get married. It's 6 months and 1 day before you can get married.
There's that. Yeah. All right. Again, thank you for joining the Don and Gino show. You can find out more by going to donandgino.com, or great professionals like Jim Reap with the Reape-Rickett Law Firm is part of America's Professional Resource Group. The best profession you can possibly find. Go to aprgi.com. That's again aprgi.com. We also have a daily video blog sharing with you what's really happening in the real estate financial worlds on a daily basis. Again, you can find that at donandgino.com, or which is the National Real Estate Cafe, NRE. Cafe.com, all kinds of great information. Thank you for being part of our show, and have a great day.